Good afternoon and welcome to the Velocity Track at this year's SSRR. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Orosz of the University of Southern California. Dr. Orosz has over 30 years experience in government and commercial software development, systems engineering and acquisition, as well as basic and applied research and development. He serves as a subject matter expert to the government in the areas of systems engineering and acquisition, intelligence analysis, particularly in open source intelligence and cyber exploration. His research interests include systems engineering, decision systems, open source intelligence analytics, data analytics, cyber physical security, and intelligent human-computer interfaces. Today, he will be presenting updates on his research task, WRT-1012, Global Positioning Systems, Mission Engineering and Integration of Emerging Technologies. With that, I turn it over to you.
Mike Orosz. I'm with University of Southern California Information Sciences Institute. We're part of the School of Engineering. And we've been with CERC for a number of years, and we're a co-sponsor of the UARC. And so today we're going to talk about a project that is a continuation of an effort we started back in 2019, and this is just an update of where we're at. What are the objectives of this project and a timeline? Since we've been in this for a while, it would be good to present what's been happening. An overview of some of the previous results, set context, and then where we're at currently with the project and some next steps coming up. So the objectives is, we're really focused on space-based systems acquisition processes, and in particular, defense space-based system acquisition processes. And our goal is to improve that process by looking for new techniques, new ways of inserting Agile and DevSecOps into what is traditionally the DoD 5000 waterfall environment. And there's been a lot of, but we're actually embedded in the system and trying to use new metrics and tracking tools to help transition 40, 50 years of waterfall effort into the new Agile and DevSecOps processes. And we're also focused on introducing any new technologies that can help with that transition. And most important, to help train our workforce, current workforce and the future workforce. So our process is really quite simple. One, we actually embed in the environment. So we're part of the team. We attend scrums, we're in the PMRs, we're participating in all the ceremonies, the demonstrations, the signing off of features, etc., reviewing of documents, particularly procedurals, which are part of the waterfall world. So again, we're in the Agile world and also the waterfall world. So we're part of the project team. And what we're doing is, again, developing approaches and techniques for transition to Agile DevSoc world. And our other objectives, not only improve the current project we're on, but also record lessons learned so that we can apply these to other domains where they're still using the older waterfall methods. So project overview, our team, we're teamed with CERC. We've been teamed with them since the beginning. Our funding agency is the U.S. Space Force and Space Systems Command Production Corps, located in El Segundo, California. Period of performance started back in 2019, and we're scheduled to go all the way through to 2023. And my suspicions are we'll go further than that as we continue to work this GPS-based project. So 4 projects that we're looking at. There's a Project A that started back 17. We came in on 2019 and helped complete it. It was a total waterfall effort, traditional, nothing new in terms of processes, roughly 39 months in length, and reasonable size project, 178,000 lines of software. Then there was a project B where we were pretty from the beginning to the end of the project, and it's a hybrid. It was composed of effort and an agile effort and it's been completed. And its duration a bit shorter, 25 months, and 113,000 lines of code. So again, a moderate-sized program. Then Project C, which just wrapped up, was a study. Actually, there was really no software developed, but rather it was an opportunity for the program to undertake some technical, build some models and some simulations to address some technical issues for an upcoming project called Project D, and also stand up an agile DevSecOps environment in preparation for that Project D. And its duration was short, 14 months, and again, there was no software lines of code, just a lot of modeling and feature shortly. And then coming up, it's actually is Project D, and it's a total agile DevSecOps, although embedded in a waterfall enterprise. So there's still some on the periphery, some waterfall elements that we need to work with, like EVM. It's approximately 48 months in length, and software lines of code is to be determined. So a quick overview of projects A and B, which passed. This is a chart showing the program or the problem reports, PRs, that were developed between Project A, which is totally waterfall, and Project B, which is a hybrid. And as you recall, Project A was a little bit larger in size, about 178,000 lines of code. So we adjusted for the size difference so we could try to compare, apples to apples. And so this chart, this line chart, shows the difference in PR counts between the two efforts. The greenish colored line is the tracking of problem reports from day one through the end of the program, 28 or 39 months later. The bottom gold or yellow trace is that Project B, which was a hybrid of both waterfall and agile, and notice considerably less PRs that were generated. In addition, note, and we'll talk a little bit about this, there's two peaks, two bow waves, if you will, of PRs for the Project A effort that were generated. And again, and the blue line is just a delta between the two. So just looking at this chart, there's definitely an improvement in the number of PRs that were did. There was a reduction of them using this hybrid approach of waterfall and agile to address the development cycle. And in a little more detail, Project B, this is just Project B, and the two traces is Project fall portion of it, and the lower trace is the agile trace of the PRs. And the notice great reduction in the PRs going with the agile approach. And again, the waterfall effort and the agile effort were identical. And in fact, the hybrid effort started 10 months later and had a very novice, almost all of the team were recent college graduates, and yet they still performed remarkably well in terms of avoiding, the traditional bow wave of PRs that you would find in a typical waterfall effort. Discussion on this. Okay, so overall the PRs, again, problem reports are lower for Project A versus lower for Project B versus Project A. So observation one, the two peaks, Project A. This is where there was a situation where there were so many PRs that were generated, it was decided to stop the integration testing effort, address those PRs, and then restart the effort. And so we had two peaks. Not totally uncommon for waterfall efforts, but it does happen. And this is a classic example of that. So observation 2 for project B, again, that's the hybrid project. The waterfall and agile teams worked in parallel, and there were periodic merges that underwent integration and testing during that effort, which actually helped reduce the PR bow wave. And I'll show you a schematic because these integration, integration problems that were generated were discovered early during these merge events, and therefore they didn't cascade down to the end of the program where you traditionally would find, those types of problems. For Project B, the Agile team again undertook frequent integration and testing. In fact, it was pretty much continuous integration throughout the whole project. And so this is of Agile and DevSecOps. So again, a schematic just to show you how Project B was undertaken. There's a baseline sustainability effort, so there's continuous work going on there. And then there's the Agile effort, which is broken up into 3 major releases, or MVPs, if you will, and MMPs. And then there was the code and integration tech out, integration and test. And so there's a periodic merges from the sustainability pipeline that went into the waterfall effort. And then there were 8 builds that came out of the waterfall effort that were merged with the Agile efforts. And so this is one of the reasons why we reduced the number of PRs at the end of the programs, because we were doing some initial integration up front, even with the waterfall effort. So one could argue that the waterfall effort was an Agile-like view with the frequent build releases. Instead of one release at the very end of the program, they had 8 of them, and then they would merge those with the Agile releases in order to get some early integration and testing completed. And again, even though there were 4 MVPs or MMPs that were generated by the Agile effort, there was continuous testing between those releases so that any discovered were addressed early and were not carried through the program. So again, Project B, the technical complexity of the waterfall components efforts were roughly the same. And then, as noted earlier, the Agile team was considerably less experienced and had a later start and up time, not just to learn about Agile, but also to learn about the domain. They had no prior experience in space systems. So, and yet they performed remarkably. So summary, introduction of Agile and DevSecOps reduced PRs and helped keep the schedule, and presumably the costs from growing. We didn't collect cost data because of privacy issues and proprietary issues with the contractor. So again, Project B, which was a hybrid Agile effort, performed better by starting later with a less experienced workforce. And in some notes, the code complexity between all of these efforts were roughly the same. For the Project B, the hybrid, the code complexity and the code between the waterfall and Agile portions of the project were approximately the same. So we really had an apple-to-apple comparison. Again, no cost data. And but again, note this is only one data point. It's a good data point, but we need to do more projects to determine just how easy Agile and DevSecOps is for inserting into a program and how quickly it can be adopted. And then finally, there was limited engagement during development with the end user community. And again, one of the benefits of an Agile world is frequent interaction with the stakeholders, and we didn't have that, so we couldn't take advantage of that. So Project C, which was a study, so there's no software that was developed, at least very little. And here the goal was to undertake initial research into technical challenges. So again, modeling of various issues, technical issues, also to populate a project backlog, and then finally stand up an agile DevSecOps software factory in preparation for this very large Project D that's coming up. And again, Project D, it's really extending an existing waterfall developed platform, but they're going to be using Agile to do that extension. And again, even though we're doing Agile and DevSecOps, we're still working within an enterprise that still has a lot of elements that are still part of the old waterfall world, EVMs, IMSs, etc. So results from the study, because that's done. An Agile environment was stood up and used throughout the study. We used a nuance of the safe environment, where we had a program increment that roughly lasted 10 weeks, and we had 6 program increments. Actually 7. There was an initial one just to ramp up and get used to using a program increment paradigm. Each of those increments had 5 sprints. The first, all 5 were focused on, each one were 2 weeks long, focused again on modeling features from system requirements, populating the backlog, doing some initial design, etc. And so this was the cadence that was used in the study. Again, we got some of this. Oh, and the initial project backlog, we actually generate some of the team backlogs. These would be the individual feature teams that'll be focused on areas of the software in Project D. We started to initially populate those backlogs or team backlogs. Work was done in the study in preparation for Project D. And also, we had a lot of training during the study. The contractor provided safe training to their team as well as to the government team. And the government team provided some topic-specific training to government personnel to help ramp us up. Agile, what is DevSecOps, what's unique about this particular implementation of Agile and DevSecOps that we need to be aware of as we move forward into Project D. So some conclusions from our study: training. You can get all the foundational training out there, and it's important to have a foundational training, but you really do need tailored training that focuses on the new implementation that's going to be used on the project. There's no one size fits all. There are nuances, and therefore a method for ramping up, let's say, new personnel that are coming in, periodic training to keep people up to date on new changes that are going on within the Agile DevSecOps framework that's being used by the contractor. These are all necessary in addition to having those foundational elements in your background. We didn't develop a whole lot of software was needed for the pipelines that were developed. But again, the project focused on the creation of features and some stories and the population of the project backlog. And we did a lot of tracking tools, of metric performance tracking tools. And we did this in-house at the government level, because the tools available are limited. In many cases, there are tools we'd like to see that provide decent metrics, but unfortunately, the vendors are free, and therefore we're not able to use those capabilities, at least not yet. So that limited us to we use Jira for tracking of features and stories that are burned off during the program. And so we customize some data dumps from those, from the Jira to produce the necessary metric tracking that we need for the program. So in our next report that we'll give next year, we'll have some of those tools available to show how they track metrics and what they provide to the decision makers. And then the other issue that we discovered is government involvement. It's absolutely necessary for the government to be involved at all levels of the acquisition effort. That means attending scrums and ceremonies, etc. But the challenge is that it really is a drain on government resources. We not only are attending all of those efforts, but we also still have the requirements of tracking, did they do the proper decomposition of features from requirements, reviewing all the procedurals, etc. And those all add up to a lot of time. This isn't a question, it's an area that's we're watching and collecting metrics on, because this is much more government involved than in previous waterfall efforts. So next, Project D has started. It started at the end of April, actually, really the beginning of May. And we're a couple of PIs in, about 10 weeks long. No coding yet, but a lot of ramping up and finishing what we didn't get accomplished in the study. So we're on our way, and we're already collecting data for this. We'll continue to work with the government team to address observations and apply lessons learned from the study. So we've been very successful in doing that. But again, we're learning even more with Project D, because now we are actually in production, and we'll continue to collect performance metrics with an eye towards metrics. So are there questions?
I don't currently see any questions in the chat or Q&A, but I have a question. So when you were talking about Project C and the government involvement, is that something that's going to continue into Project D as you try to find that balance? And what are you doing to try and find that balance? Is it just trial and error and experimentation and involving them in the scrums? What is the approach there? I think a lot of PIs can relate to that.
Right. So that's a very good question. And we're not randomizing this. In fact, just before I got on this session, we discussed this very issue of, how, what's our plan for the rest of the sprint? There's a sprint that's going to end next week. And are we going to change the government's cadence a bit going into sprint number 4, for example, because sprint number 3 is ending. And so there is, collect data, and we make a decision. Same thing with the contractor. The contractor, although not recorded in a future release of our results, we're doing a 10-week PI, 5 sprints, each 2 weeks long. All right, you have a sprints. Before you know it, you have another sprint ceremony. A 13-week PI. Well, that didn't happen overnight. That took time to collect the data, workforce, both on the contractor and the government side, to find, this is too short, let's lengthen it. So we're doing the same thing. How much does the government get involved? At one point during the study, we were bombarding the contractor with questions at every. That's not good. Okay, so they pushed back. We learned, and so now we might be on the opposite side a little bit. The pendulum might. We don't ask a lot of questions during the scrum, but we do follow-up questioning later. But maybe during the scrum might be a good time to ask some questions. So we're trying to find that balance. So it's an organized approach. I'm confident we'll find it. I think we're getting close to it. But we haven't really started the serious coding yet either. So I think there'll be a little bit of effort. So very good question. Yeah.
Of course. No, and I think that's a valuable insight and something, as I mentioned, that a lot of PIs can probably relate to. We're all oversaturated and time is valuable to everyone. So, all
Yeah.
right. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for your
Sure.
time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and everybody have a great rest of your day on East Coast. I guess it's almost dinner time, so enjoy.
Thanks. Thanks so
Bye.
much. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.